Hey, what's up? You are listening to the Spiritual Millennial Podcast. My name is Kevin Oberhausen, and this is episode number 007. Hey, what's up? You're listening to the Spiritual Millennial. My name is Kevin Oberhausen, and I'm excited to do this episode. It's something that people often ask about. It comes up in a lot of the workshops that I do. That a lot of that is because it's something that is happening within the workshops. I do a lot of workshops where there's a lot of channeled meditation. So the question often comes up, like, how do you communicate with archangels, the ascended masters, things like that? And with that question, the first thing I want to bring up, especially as we mention the word ascended masters, and if you're not familiar with the term ascended masters, basically it's this blanket term given to beings such as yourself who have reached a certain level of ascension or have decided to remain in a certain ascended state, or basically exists in a plane not incarnate like we are here, and they're just zipping around in multi-dimensional space, similar to like an angel, loving and supporting us right here, deciding to dedicate their time or focus to loving and serving us and assisting us on our own journey. But as we talk about ascended masters, first thing I want to point out is that everyone is a master. Everyone. You listening to this, your family, even the ones that you don't care for, the people walking down the street, the people at your work and the classrooms, all of it, everyone you've ever met, every human being, and really every being out there is a master. And with mentioning that, it's worth diving into what the fuck that even means. So, or what comes with that, or what we're really saying here. So as a master, there's a couple of things that comes with it. And the ones that we'll focus on, or the ones we'll mention right now, are the fact that energy moves when you tell it to, and your thoughts and beliefs create your reality, right? You literally are creating your life every single moment as a master. And energy moves when you tell it to as a master. Or another way we can say it is that, you are this divine spiritual being, and as this divine spiritual being and as this master, you energy moves when you tell it to, and you are inherently a creator and create and have mastery over this should you choose to engage with it or utilize it. The reason that we talk about that is to kind of level the playing field. We're talking about communicating with these beings. These are not beings that are higher than ourselves, that are more holy than ourselves, that are more godlike than ourselves, anything like that. No, we all stand shoulder to shoulder. And the reason that we bring that up is because I think one of the biggest hangups people can have when beginning to work with these beings, or beginning to work with these beings in a more conscious way, being more aware of their communication with them, are these beliefs that either they're not good enough to talk to them, or these beliefs that these beings wouldn't give them the time or wouldn't listen, or that they don't care, or who am I to do this? Like, we can cut all that crap. These beings, not only do they love you infinitely and are always there as you call them, they will always come. They always show up. They're always there as you call them. But y'all are on an even playing field. We all are on an even playing field. Again, everybody stands shoulder to shoulder. If you call Jermaine's a being that I love to work with. If I call Jermaine, Jermaine's my homie. Jermaine and I, same level, right? Helping to remove the judgment from it. Another being I really enjoy working with is Mother Mary. Call her in. Same level, homies, right? They might not be dealing with an ego, so they'll show up and love and not take things personally and things like that. But that doesn't make them any more or less, right? It's just we're incarnate here as a human. It's an ego is something that we have, and at least at this time, and that's it. That's really it. But we're all standing shoulder to shoulder. We're buddies. These beings, there's someone that I talk to normally, the same way that you would a friend, because they are your friend, and they are equal, and they'll be the first ones to tell you that. Jermaine, Mother Mary, they'll be the first ones to tell you, like, absolutely, you're a master. Absolutely, you're a divine being of love and our perfection, and that it's certainly, and that's your ego telling you otherwise. And so again, we mentioned this, and all you need to do is let that go and allow yourself to realize, allow yourself to experience that you are this master. Allow yourself to not allow yourself to experience it. Experience that you're a master. Accept that you're a master, right? You can affirm, I accept my mastery now. I am that I am. Using those words and thoughts to help shift and cultivate that awareness. Your mindset affects your thoughts, your beliefs. Your mindset can affect what you attract, how you feel, and your perception, right? But also moves energy, as we mentioned. So as you're affirming, as you're calling out, I accept my mastery now. I am that I am. I am that I am, a phrase just kind of affirming your divinity or your oneness with source and your higher self. You start to activate or realize this existence or this shift. And again, all of this then leads to assisting people getting through the whole, this is, the whole, like, why would they talk to me, or are they going to show up, or, who am I to talk to, especially if you came from like a Christian or Catholic background, like, who am I to talk to Mother Mary, who isn't like a Catholic or Christian being, right? This is just a being that is totally non-denominational, has no affiliation, strict affiliation to things. I would say like an affiliation to any group or sect, right? Like it's just Mother Mary. It's just this loving person being that it's like calling on, like Archangel Gabriel. And the archangels can sometimes maybe have a religious connotation too, because that's where you hear about them most often. But it's again, like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you believe. Like, you can call one of these beings and they'll show up, just the same as they'll show up for everybody else. And with that, we'll move forward. So first thing, kind of realizing you stand shoulder to shoulder with all of these beings. They love you. They'll be the first to tell you this. You are this divine being of love and perfection, as you are right now. Believe it or not, you are beautiful and amazing. So going forth, the next thing is, I think, really just to get started. And this is something I think people can maybe overcomplicate this in their heads. I know that that there were times where I or my ego had sought to overcomplicate the whole process. And, one of the things that really assisted me in learning how to channel and learning how to communicate with these beings was the instruction of John Armitage, who is the founder for a series of workshops called New Paradigm MDT, which are certification courses for energetic healing, but also like self-transformational intensives. And it all focuses on that self-mastery, standing in your power, living from the heart, love without conditions, non-judgment, freedom from fear. But a lot of the workshops consist of guided channeled meditations, tons of energetic clearings and activations and things like that, but a lot of it's through channeled meditation. And in order to facilitate the 4-day workshop, you have to take a 9-day certification course with the founder. And to pass this, you have to stand up and channel for at least 5 minutes in front of the class, and then do like an energetic activation, which you're guided to do. And this test is not it's not John up there like, okay, can you do this? Or Jermaine, who's the ascended being, that oversees this, right? So like John and Jermaine are kind of like the team that brought these workshops into play. John being like the ground team, and Jermaine, what we often refer to as the upstairs department, which isn't meant to be like, oh, the heavenly department, but the just like the multi-dimensional department. And it's not a test for them. They know you can do it, right? It's a test for yourself to stand in your power, to show yourself that you can do it. But anyways, during this workshop, you do a ton of channeling practice. And here's how the instruction for channeling, this is how John set you up to do it. He said, you guys are all going to pair up in groups of 2. You're going to choose who's going to start first, and you're going to go 10 minutes each. No idle chatter. If you're talking, you're channeling. If you're not channeling, you're not talking. The first rule, or the first step for channeling, open mouth. And that is to say, just start talking, essentially. And here's how some of this will go. So the reason he does this, or from my experience, what I think the reason he does this is, one, it's that simple. Anything beyond that, and you're probably going to you might complicate things or confuse people, because there is no trick to it, right? The only other thing that you might mention is to just give notice. I am open to receive, and just receive, and just go with what comes through. As you start channeling, you'll feel the energy come through, and you'll just start talking, right? You might see images. There might be sensations that might come through as more of a knowing, or you might hear the messages or whatever. And this will go on for the duration of your channeling, and then, that's it. Or in this case, in the practice, you would switch, and that's it. It's that simple. And there might be plenty of people that are listening to this, and they're thinking that is way too simple. Might want to turn this off because it's not revealing this big secret they were hoping it would reveal. And now all of a sudden they'll be able to channel or talk with these beings. But that is the big secret. It's not really a secret, but that's the big thing. And it will be, and that is the big thing that will not allow you to start doing it, because you can already do it. And that's why it is part of that big secret, or it's that big thing. It's because you can already do it. You don't need to know or learn this one thing and then all of a sudden be able to do it. Basically, the one thing that you need to learn or know is the fact that you can do it already. And all you have to do is just start. But how to start is something that we'll share in this episode. So I'm going to finish first by kind of talking about the experience with the channeling practice, because this will lead into some of the experiences you might have with the process or technique that I'll share with you. So more of a process than a technique. So with the channeling practice, what might happen is everyone will channel or whatever, and then everyone comes back into like a circle in a group, and then we share experiences. And as we share experiences, we'll go one by one, and then, you might get to somebody and they're like, nothing happened. And John will be like, what do you mean nothing happened? Or not, what do you mean what nothing happened? It'll be like, well, what do you mean by nothing? Like, what happened? Like, nothing happened. Okay, well, did you see anything? Or, what were you thinking as this happened? Or, what was going on in your head? Like, well, so I was sitting there, and, I just kept asking, like, who am I going to channel with? Who am I going to channel with? Right? Like, who's going to come? Who wants to come up? And all I kept seeing was this image of Mother Mary, and then John would respond with something like, well, there you go, Mother Mary. And so let's pause here with that. You're looking to see who's going to show up. All you kept getting, though, is this image of Mother Mary. Maybe it's Mother Mary. But what might happen is Mother Mary pops up as this person's, they're sitting there taking deep breaths. And then, who am I going to channel with? And then Mary pops up and they're like, oh, excuse me, I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to channel with. And it's this thing called denial, right? So you're trying to figure out what's going to be, and you'll get this image of Mother Mary, and like, oh, that can't be it. Well, why not? And this denial is something to be aware of. In fact, I really enjoyed this explanation, because I had noticed in my own channeling practice, in my own channeling work, that there might be that response. But once you go with it, right? Once you go with it, everything opens up. And so I really like this denial thing because it kind of shared or opened up, brought awareness to a lot of what can be happening. Like you'll sit down and you'll get started and you'll just kind of keep getting this thing, but you keep denying it and maybe not even realizing that you just keep turning down the same thing. And well, maybe the reason you're getting the same thing over and over is because that's the thing. And then the moment you go with it, the moment you get rid of that denial and you go with it, it all opens up. As you go with it and you start talking, you just open your mouth and start talking and allow that flow to move through. And now, the rest of the information comes, or more of the information comes. And as you keep talking and sharing, like more and more information comes. But as they show up and start giving you this initial message or this initial response, and you're sitting there like, oh, that can't be it. That can't be it. That can't be it. Maybe they do try in a couple different ways, but you're just sitting there like every time you get something, you're like, nope. So this is something to be aware of when you're practicing this, whether you're doing it in the way that I share or some variation of it, because you can do an even basically just do a simpler version of what I'm about to share, but realizing that just being aware of what you're getting and not doubting yourself, right? Just going with it and seeing what happens. This leads to our little technique for all of this. So if you want to start talking to or communicating with archangels, the ascended masters, other beings, even past loved ones, right? Even past loved ones. First thing to do, as with all things, take a deep breath and then just call that being to you. Take a deep breath, call that being to you, and then observe. Observe what you get. Maybe you feel, again, and this can come through in different ways. It can be a subtle sensation of maybe heat or tingling, right? So like, let's say you're working with Archangel Michael and you just, hey, Archangel Michael, let's hang out. And then all of a sudden you feel like maybe like a surge of energy through your body, or maybe you feel like a heat on your back or a tingle on your neck or a sensation on your right side, right? Observe it. And I say observe it, well, a couple of things. Like this is how it can show up, is these subtle sensations. Maybe you just get an image of Michael, right? An image of Archangel Michael. Or it can even be something that you hear. You might hear Michael pop up. What up? What's up? First name? How are you? It's really, it can be that simple and nonchalant. And just paying attention to these subtle sensations. And when you get that, then moving forward. So if you ask and you feel this subtle sensation, like, okay, I think that's it. I think Archangel Michael's here. You can maybe even follow up with, Archangel Michael, is that you? See what happens. Does the sensation intensify? Does the sensation just happen again? Is there a different sensation or a different thing that you see or hear or feel or whatever that feels like confirmation or seems to represent confirmation? It can even come in as like a knowing, and then continue from there. Ask a question. You can ask a question about Archangel Michael. You can ask a question about channeling. You can ask a question about really whatever, right? And another thing that will help is to not judge the responses. And so there's more of a technique for that. So you might be saying, okay, like let's say I call in Michael, like, what if nothing happens? What if I call in Mother Mary and what if nothing happens? What if I call in, my grandmother and nothing happens? Well, that's okay. Take a deep breath, ask again, call again. One thing that I can say is guaranteed. If you call one of these beings to you, they will show up. If you call in Jermaine, Mother Mary, the archangels, right? Certainly if you call in one of these, an ascended master, an archangel, they will show up for you. 100%. So if you ask and you feel like you didn't get anything, it's not that they didn't show up. Maybe you just didn't catch what it was, or you did and you denied it, right? There were times I caught myself, the image came up so subtly, or the sensation came up so subtly, I almost didn't even catch myself like turning it down, right? And so what you're learning to do is to pay attention to these sensations, because you have them. Everybody, I think I kind of meant to lead with this. Everybody has these the psychic or intuitive abilities. Everybody. Again, everybody's a master. Everybody's divine. Everybody's standing shoulder to shoulder. The whole idea that only certain people can do this, only special people can do this, it's only people that are born with it can do this is bullshit. Or you could say it's only people that are born with it that can do it, but everybody's born with it. So it's something you can certainly do. Everybody can do it. People do it all the time and just don't necessarily realize it. Channeling, receiving guidance, things of that nature. You've got your guides that are constantly, consistently supporting you. And you receive that information all the time. You just might not always necessarily be conscious of it. That's why it's kind of this practice, or coming back to like paying attention to these faculties, to these awarenesses. It's something that you're born with, that you are very aware of as a child. And what can happen is, as you're growing up, or as you continue to grow up, you start to ignore some of these things. And sometimes that's because you're around people who are ignoring them, right? Oh, mom, look at the angel in the corner. Oh, that's just your imagination. Or even just being around people who are never responding to the stuff, you might just stop paying attention to it as much, because you might start to feel that it's non-essential information. And the way our brains work is that it filters out what might be considered as non-essential. And the way our brains work is, there's all these sensations, all these awarenesses happening all the time, but your brain will kind of filter out what it feels is maybe essential or non-essential. So if you're walking down the street and there's a car driving by on the street, it's going the same direction you are, you might not really notice much about that car, if you really notice anything at all, other than the fact that, the slightest subtle awareness that there was a car that went past you because of the sound or whatever. But if that car starts heading towards you, or sounds like it's heading towards you, it will rapidly be put more into, if not just injected straight into, your very conscious field of view, so that you can get the fuck out of the way, right? Now it's essential information. So with a lot of these psychic awarenesses, and it's over time, maybe filter out as non-essential information. So all you need to do is just start paying attention to them. Right? And as you start consciously doing this work and you start paying attention to them, then it just gets easier and easier. Because again, this is something that's very natural for you. No matter who you are, this is something that happens very naturally for you. So all you need to do is start paying attention. And one of the ways you can do this is through this exercise of just starting to call the beings in. Right? Whether that's a loved one, an archangel, an ascended master, just calling them in and observing how you feel. Observing what you notice, what you see, what you may hear, right? The sensations or senses that you get as you do this. And so let's say you don't get anything, you feel like you don't get anything when you ask. One thing that you can also do as you're starting to do this is set the intention to pay attention, or to notify your brain, your subconscious, that these awarenesses, these psychic awarenesses, these faculties, these intuitive capabilities, they are now to be considered as vital information. You want to be aware of them in a way that's not overwhelming for you. And with that, you can keep going. So you can call the beings in, see what you notice. And if you don't notice anything, that's okay. One, trust that they're there. They 100% show up. So it's just more so like you maybe, you just maybe didn't have the awareness of it, or weren't paying attention to it as it happened, right? You're just relearning some of this, or just starting to become more aware of it. And so you can ask again. Be like, if you're working with Archangel Michael or Jermaine, you'd be like, hey, Jermaine, can you go away and come back again? It's like, okay, Jermaine, go away real quick. All right, Jermaine, come back and see what you feel. And just observe, right? And the observation thing is what helps get through the judgment of what you're getting, as to whether or not it was valid, or as to whether or not you are getting anything, is to just observe. And one thing you can do is keep track of it. So 9 p.m., call in Jermaine. Feel a tingling on my spine. 9:05 p.m., call Jermaine again. Again, I think I feel a tingling on my spine, more like the base. 9:10, calling Jermaine again. I feel right, and just observe, right? So you don't even have to worry about is this really like, is this Jermaine? Is this just because I'm a little cold? Is this just this, or is it because I'm whatever? Don't worry about it. All you need to do is just call the being in and observe what you get, and just write it down. And over time, you might find some consistencies, right? If you've done this 10 times and every single time you felt, like a cool sensation on the back of your neck or the tops of your shoulders, and one of the times you were in a hot ass fucking room, so it definitely wasn't like a draft from the window, like chances are the reason it's happening 10 times in a variety of rooms is because that's the way that like you perceive that arrival of Jermaine or whoever you're working with, Archangel Michael, Raphael, any of these beings, Katumi, Hilarion, Ganesh, Shiva. You can work with all of them. Remember, stand shoulder to shoulder. You and Ganesh, homies, high five, elephant hands. It's simple. And then the same way as you continue with the questions, right? So call them in, high five them, whatever, feeling comfortable with that. Or even if you just want to do all this in one go, so it can be like 9:00, call Jermaine, 9:01, ask Jermaine this, 9:02, ask, talked about whatever. But as you continue the conversation, just being aware and just observing. And, if you'd like, you can keep track of the responses or the awarenesses that you have. And just continue with this. And again, don't worry about if it's right or if it's wrong. You can just observe and write down. And I'm willing to bet you that a vast majority of the time, you're spot on, right? And so as you work with channeling, like coming into like channeling work, you just go with what comes up, and you'll find almost always that it leads to somewhere. It's a magical thing, right? If you feel like you got the guidance on something, follow through with it. See how magically everything comes together when you just trust and go. Channeling is an amazing experience, and just letting go and trusting and moving forward, and things just happening in the moment as things happen. Just following the guidance as it happens. And then by the end of it, somehow it all, something magical happened, or it all made sense, or, you come out of it. And I'm speaking more from an experience, like, leading meditations, come out of it and you get stories from people like, oh, when I was a child, I da-da-da-da-da-da. And, how something that maybe didn't seem to like, I don't know why we're going this direction, but it ends up being something, extra meaningful or especially special for the people that are in the room. In life, you can do the same thing. You can experience this another way. A way you can experience this. Another way you can experience this, especially if you aren't someone who is, leading meditations or workshops and things like that, is by communicating with your I am presence. Your I am presence, you can think of this as your higher self, right? It's what's considered the 8th dimensional aspect of you. And I know this can sound super esoteric or woo-woo, and you don't have to believe a word that comes out of my mouth at all ever. But if you want to just keep it in a simple form, or words that feel more familiar, you can just think of it as your higher self. And this is a wonderful source of guidance, if not like the source of guidance for you. This is an aspect on your an aspect on your direct chain back to the heart of source, right? Like source is you. Your I am presence, or your higher self is you. You are your I am. You are source. All these things. But this direct guidance, like who to take guidance from other than your higher self over anyone else, right? Jermaine shows up and says one thing. Your I am shows up and says another thing. Who are you going to listen to? I'd hope your higher self, your I am presence. That's not to say anything against Jermaine. It's just more of, this is like your most direct form or source of guidance. This is standing in your own power, right? But with that, coming back into the guidance or the experience of it, it's the same. You ask the same questions. It's the same thing. One, your I am presence will always respond. You will always get a response. If you feel like you didn't get a response, ask again. You just didn't catch it necessarily, or you caught it and you're just denying it, right? Like some form of that. But you definitely got a response. Ask and just you can affirm, I am open to receive, and just allow yourself to receive the response. Sit in that moment of reception and just see what you feel or see or hear, or just all of a sudden like get a sense of or feel that right? And as you're communicating with your I am, one thing that can help is being able to distinguish the difference between your ego and your I am presence, your ego and your higher self. And one of the ways you can do that is by understanding the language of the ego, which we talk about in depth in the first episode of this podcast called Love Your Ego, which is a deep dive into it. But in short, voices of anger, fear, judgment, things like that, always your ego. Jealousy, the need to be right, different things. I highly encourage you to listen to the first episode, take that deep dive, to go more into the understanding of it, so that it's even easier for you to be able to distinguish when it's your ego, the ego's response that, when it was your ego's response versus the response from your I am, right? But so as you ask your I am presence, you're always going to get a response from it. And, following that guidance, magical things happen. And again, not judging what comes in, because as you get the guidance, it might not be what you necessarily expect, right? So there was a point during this 9-day workshop with John Armitage, the one with all the channeling, where I was feeling a little weird or a little off. And I asked my I am, like, hey, like, what's something I can do about this, right? Because I was thinking about going to ask John, because we were all on a break. But I know that sometimes John, when we're on a break, like, he just wants to be on a break. He doesn't want to deal with not that he doesn't want to deal with, but it's an energetically intense workshop, and sometimes you just want to like just not do workshop things for a few minutes. So I was kind of debating on that, and so I decided, like, I'll just ask my I am, like, hey, what can I do about this? And immediately I see this image of John on the bench where he was just at, and I almost thought, or there was this thought or this denial, like, oh, like, I think that, that could have just been because I just looked over there and that's what it looked like. But then catching that whole like denial thing, decided to throw that out. And I was like, let's just follow through on it and let's just see what happens, right? Let's just see what happens. Observe. All right, I'm gonna follow this guidance. And I went over there and I sat down next to him and I asked him, hey, Baba. He's also known as Aridas Baba. He was lived a life of a monk for some time. So I asked him, I was like, Baba, can I ask you a question? And he's like, honestly, Kevin, like right now, it just, kind of like telling me like pretty much what I already knew. He's like, I just kind of need a break from it right now. Like, okay. So we start talking about other stuff, and we just talked for a bit. And, after a little bit, some other people came up, had some questions about, how things were going to move forward as we were wrapping up our break. And as I was walking back inside, I realized, well, first, when I sat down and he said no, I was like, oh, okay, like maybe that wasn't the guidance to go over to him. That's all right. We just had the conversation. But then after we had the conversation and I was walking back inside, I all of a sudden realized, hey, I feel great. Like that whole feeling just is gone. And then kind of coming back to like that was the guidance. The guidance was to go over and talk to John, but it wasn't to go over and talk to John and start asking him like, so, whatever questions I was going to ask him. It was just to go over and talk to John, and like, hey, Kevin, just chill the fuck out and get out of your head for a second. Right. And all the like, uneasiness or whatever I was feeling was gone. And so these magical things can happen when you just drop the denial, follow the guidance, and, see what shows up. And, one of the ways that you can experience some of that kind of like in the moment, like following the guidance, like just kind of seeing what comes up thing is by communicating with your I am presence. Anytime you have a question, check in with your higher self, see what the guidance is. And again, being able to recognize like when it's the voice of the ego, that'll help immensely So again, I encourage you to listen back to that first episode. But also, this will help in addition to helping with communicating or distinguishing between the voice of your I am and your ego. Same thing with communicating with the archangels and being such ascended masters such as Jermaine and Katumi and things like that. If you get a response of judgment or fear or anger or any of those things, guaranteed that is your ego. Take a deep breath, ask again. What's the other response that you're getting, right? If your ego's having that one response, recognize that as your ego. You ask again, you realize, underneath it was the sensation of whatever, and it feels more loving or calm or this or that, and or just more in alignment, right? You'll feel it. You'll feel the difference. So with that, we can wrap things up. I'll first kind of go over the whole practice again. Take a second, whether it's in your room by yourself or just a moment where you just have some quiet. You can do this on the go for sure, but starting off, if you think you'll find it easier, just sitting down on your bed and when it's quiet, do that. Lights on or off doesn't matter. Just whatever's comfortable to you. We feel like you can just kind of sit back and observe and listen, and then pick whoever you're going to work with. If you feel most comfortable working with the archangels, do that. If you want to pick an ascended master, do that. Or pick one of the masters, do that. If you want to pick grandma, go with grandma. And, take a deep breath, call them in, and observe. If you want to keep a notebook to keep track of the things that you feel, see, etc., get a sense of, keep track of it. And, again, take a breath, call them in, and play with it. If you don't feel like you get something, you can ask them to go away and come back. You can just go into another, just trusting that they're there. Just go into another question, see what you get, things like that, and just continue to do it. And if it seems challenging to you, or if you feel frustrated as you get started with this, just recognize that it's the ego. Take another deep breath. And I guarantee that you're receiving the answers. I guarantee that you're receiving the answers. So trust. Allow yourself to trust. Allow yourself to receive, and allow yourself to know that you are receiving the answers. Just take a deep breath, ask again, and observe. And you'll notice it. Eventually, you'll notice it. So thank you so much for listening. I am so grateful for each of you who listen, the fact that you listen at all on this format with me. So thank you so much for that. If you ever have any questions, any things that you want answered or addressed on this podcast, shoot an email to info@kevinoberhausen.com. I'm happy to see, what you guys want to hear, what you guys want to talk about, and have those conversations. It's exciting for me to communicate with you guys in a way that, I'm ultimately looking to build, more of a community. I don't at all want this to be this isn't a one-way conversation, or it's not meant to be a one-way conversation. So, take the time, shoot me an email, let me know what you think. But you can also go to kevinoberhausen.com/angel talk for the show notes on this episode, and to be able to hit the comments. Again, you can ask your questions there. You can engage with it. You can, whether it's questions about the specific episode or other things in general that you want to hit on, that's the place to do it. So I'll see you over there, kevinoberhausen.com/angel talk. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in another episode.